Part 2. Tell me you love me. So this assassination attempt leads us to the completely and utterly implausible and stupid plot of the movie. That Anakin must take Padme to her homeworld in order to protect her. Seriously, it's so dumb it's like some kind of romance novel or something, or like a late-night Cinemax sex movie. For one, Obi-Wan knows that Anakin's kind of crazy in love with her, so you'd think he'd suggest that they send Padme off with the guy that looks like a squid. You know, that guy. And they don't call him Kit Fisto, cause he's into chicks, if you know what I mean. So then the Jedi Council, for no logical reason at all other than to maintain the plot, they think Anakin's ready and that he should go with Padme.
Escort the senator back to her home planet of Naboo. She'll be safer there.
Two young star-crossed lovers should go on this romantic getaway, when romance and love is forbidden and leads to the dark side. Fuck it. Oh wait, I guess Palpatine was the guy that initially suggested the idea, so he might have been like using a trick on him or something. You know, his grand plan was to cloud all their judgment and trick them into letting Anakin go with her, because he knew he was gonna fall in love, get Padme pregnant, then have premonitions of future pregnancy complications resulting in her death, so that Palpatine could tell Anakin that he can use the dark side to save her, so that Anakin could become Darth Vader and help Palpatine rule the Empire. You'd think if this guy could see that far into the future, he just picked a lot of those numbers. Maybe that's how he paid for the clones. But wait, if that were the case, fuck it. Hey, anybody want to help me milk my cat? It's time to make breakfast. So this movie operates under the logic that assassinations only take place at night, because Padme is packing her things right next to a bunch of open windows in broad fucking daylight. Then there's even robots floating outside the window, and Anakin doesn't even seem to notice this. And the last assassination attempt was by a robot at the window. Fucking Helen Keller could assassinate her at this point. Eventually they go back to Naboo, and we kind of forget about the silly assassination thing. And apparently they do too, because they make absolutely no effort to conceal themselves in any way. She might as well paint a target on her face. You know, if she's so safe on Naboo, then why didn't Anakin just drop her off and come back? I think it's pretty naive to assume that whoever this assassin is couldn't figure out that they went back to Naboo after he sees that Jar Jar Binks has replaced Amidala in the Senate. Then he could just find them and take his time and shoot her when they're, say, sitting in an open field. But I digress. This is really about love, right? And if love is forbidden, then we're supposed to instantly care about it, right? Well, no, not at all. Just because you throw obstacles in the way of a romance doesn't mean that we'll care about it, but instead we have to endure this completely implausible premise. It don't make no sense.
Throughout the film, they're put in these very extreme settings because they're in hiding.
Now, I'm the last person in the world who you call an expert on love, considering that most of my relationships seem to end up inside several different trash bags. But I think I might actually understand this a little more than George Lucas. To him, love seems to be only something from like Romeo and Juliet.
See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek.
Something like an alien or a robot would view human love as. Like a guy who hopelessly pursues a woman by saying cliched love dialogue.
You are in my very soul, tormenting me.
And a woman who blushes and smiles, but insists they can't be together because of whatever convenient social implications prevent them from it.
I'm a senator.
And a Montague.
Neither fair maid, if either thee dislike.
And a place death, considering who thou art.
This is movie romance at its most superficial and one-dimensional. Two attractive people in beautiful locations. They must be in love. I did enjoy, however, watching the actors squirm and BS their way through interviews when asked to describe the romance plot. You might call the acting in episode 2 bad, but watch, these people are pros at the whole acting thing.
She really struggles with sort of the career versus romance issue.
You see, the thing is that both characters have no reason at all to love each other, other than the fact that they are simply physically attracted to each other. So instead of making the story about them just fucking like wild rabbits, they imply some kind of deeper emotional connection that has never been established because they don't know each other. It's what they call a contradiction. So a bunch of nerds will argue that it's the will of the Force that they be together, but that's just an excuse for sloppy, shitty writing. This is also yet another example of how these characters are always written backwards in the Star Wars prequels. See, Padme has no reason to not want to be in a relationship. She's not the queen anymore. She's just a senator. She should be on the prowl for some action on the side. Edward style, baby. And Anakin should be trying to keep his composure and stick with what he had just been taught for the last 10 years. Maybe be somewhat resistant at first. I don't know, it just seems to make more sense that way. And it'd be fitting metaphorically, too. She tempts him and begins the process of ruining his Jedi training and causing the destruction of paradise. Apple, anyone?
Therefore thou mayst think my behaviour light. But trust me, gentlemen, I'll prove more true than those that have more cunning to be strange.
I'm a senator.
Arf. But, while Padme is supposedly against them falling in love, she allows for them to take romantic walks along scenic vistas, dine in elegant settings, frolic in the fields, and roll around with each other in the grass. Then she wears sexy, revealing clothing, oftentimes in front of a fireplace, exposing the contoured details of her sexy-ass body and titties. I still can't decide if this is the worst screenwriting ever, or if this girl is the biggest galactic cock tease since Anjum. It's almost comical how all this is played out. These characters are so flat and uninteresting, and Lucas doesn't seem to know how to write dialogue between two real people.
I wish that I could just wish away my feelings.
That we basically have to be told that they're in love. We can't actually experience it or feel it because I suspect he doesn't know how to convey it. They're both attractive people and smile a lot. They're in love. They rode in on a space gondola, just like in Venice, the most romantic city on Earth. They're in love. There's no substance to any of this. And in the end, this simple moment between two characters had 1,000,000 times more depth and realism than even the biggest fake waterfalls your computer could make. Now you say, maybe they are in love, and maybe I just don't see it because I'm a psychopath who butchers women. Well, yeah. To that I say, let's turn towards further analysis to find our conclusion. Now I've analyzed this film with two experts in the field of true love, porn star Jocelyn James and Tiger Woods. Both have provided me with valuable insights about love and stable monogamous relationships. For most men, and especially Anakin, a 19-year-old male with raging hormones, the list of what he's looking for in a relationship is rather short. Number 1, is she hot? Number 2, seriously bro, how hot is she? And that's it. Now what women are looking for is a little more complex. Their list is as follows.
Does he have a good job? Where does he live and what kind of car does he drive?
He needs to be confident without being too arrogant. He needs to be funny, but not like goofy funny. He needs to be tall, but not too tall or like weird tall.
He should be spontaneous, but only when I'm expecting it.
Handsome is a plus, and handsome with good hair is better. No baldies, LOL. He needs to know the exact time to say all the right things.
He needs to know the right time not to say anything.
He really needs to know how to treat me like the woman I am, both in the bedroom and when we're out on the town. He needs to be family-oriented and good with kids, but not too good with kids, like in a creepy clown way.
He needs to be intelligent, or at the very least, money smart, so we can know how to invest for retirement, the kids' college fund, and our funeral expenses. He can have his friends and do things with them, but only when it's convenient for me.
He needs to care about me, but not be too controlling. You know, sometimes I just want to go out and have fun with the girls, and he needs to be okay with that, and not get all like,
stop.
Hey, where
Thank
are you
that'll
going?
be all. Then the list goes on to 167, but I'll stop there, you get the point. Now when first courting a woman, she'll be interested in two things. That you don't look like Danny DeVito, and that you say and do all the right things. Since Anakin looks like a guy from a JCPenney catalog, he's safe in the looks department. But can his actions and words hold up? Get in my living room! Put it to the test. You see, when you say something right... I just need your help with something. Please.
Okay. I will help you. I will. As long as you promise that after I help you, you let me go home to my baby.
I promise. I need you to help me. I need to show you something. Now this might be quite disturbing to you.
Okay.
But I need you to see it.
Okay, what is
in order to help me.
No.
How does it taste? Salty.
I just need you to see it in order to help me. Please, I need to show you it. It's called Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
What? Star Wars?
I need you to see it in order to help me. Just get in the chair that's over by the television set. I'm gonna put the movie on and you're gonna watch it. You understand me? Look at me! You're gonna watch it! You see, when you say something right to a woman, she smiles, tickles her brain, which in turn sends blood flowing down to her sex hole. But her smile could also be deceptive and could indicate one of 117 different things. Sarcasm, incredulity, condescension, confusion, contemplation, facetiousness. So in the very brief time that Anakin and Padme are together, they decide to get married as well. And don't say it was the will of the Force unless you don't want me to send you a pizza roll. And when I send it to you, I'm gonna shove it up your ass. So other than being a handsome guy, let's analyze what Anakin did to win over Padme. 1. When Anakin first meets Padme, she's like, oh, hello. And then she drops an unintentional Freudian phallic reference.
My goodness, you've grown.
Win. Good looks. Then the very first thing that comes out of Anakin's mouth is a very awkward and inappropriately placed compliment.
So have you grown more beautiful, I mean.
Inappropriate compliment. She smiles lovingly and dismisses it as nerves. Women don't mind an initial nervousness from a guy. It's complimentary and cute to them. But it gets old real fast. Assertiveness needs to take over quickly. But too much assertiveness and arguing with your boss to impress her comes off as a pathetic and desperate attempt for attention. Inappropriate assertiveness. Next, women like when you ask them questions about things. They like to talk about themselves a lot and don't really care what you have to say. For example, in this next scene, Padme mentions how she's worked for a year on legislation to oppose the Military Creation Act, or something.
I haven't worked for a year to defeat the Military Creation Act.
Even if you could care less about this shit, you just pretend like you do. You can say, well, that sounds interesting. Tell me about this piece of legislation. Then she'll start running her mouth, and you could think about sex while she's talking. Occasionally you should nod, and always be prepared with some follow-up questions. Instead, Anakin misses this very obvious lead and immediately starts talking about himself and his Jedi stuff.
I am truly thankful to be his apprentice.
Talking too much about yourself and your job. She doesn't care. Then it gets worse. He starts bitching and complaining about his job and his boss, almost to where it seems like he's gonna start crying.
He's overly critical. He never listens. He doesn't understand.
Keep in mind that this is
not
only
fair.
like their second scene together. I can only imagine what she's thinking.
Holy shit, this guy is a fucking annoying whiner. I really can't see myself with him. If he's bitching about this, imagine how he'll act when I want him to go see Wicked with me.
And then... creepy sex looks. And if a woman ever says you're making me uncomfortable,
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
it's usually not a good sign. Unless she's into that sort of thing. So now I guess they go to Naboo.
Don't do anything without first consulting either myself or the council.
Hey man, go ask the council first, because I'm sure they'll just agree to whatever. So it's cool. So they're off on their romantic Italian vacation. It's a girl who's under threat of assassination, and a guy whose training was prophesized to bring grave danger. And they're sending them off together, alone. Why? And yet again, the two most logical, clear-minded guys aren't going along and they just stand there and watch it happen.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
They even placed bets on who's gonna make the first move.
I'd be more concerned about her doing something.
Yeah, this guy knows what's up. So when they're on the transport ship, Padme does a little feeler to see if Anakin and her can fuck in the bathroom.
Are you allowed to love? Thought that was forbidden for a Jedi.
Anakin responds with an earnest yet clumsy response about a loophole in the Jedi doctrine about love. This kind of pleases her, so we'll give him a point. Finally, they arrive at the most romantic city in the universe, and Anakin scores a few points early on, carrying her luggage.
I was relieved when my 2 terms were up, but when the Queen asked me to serve as
Listening to her prattle on about herself. For a few minutes, it seems like he's learning, but then he goes back to being a prick.
But I was thinking...
Hold on a minute.
Excuse me.
Interrupting.
Excuse me.
Losing temper.
Sorry, milady.
Forced apology. Then for no reason they take a ride on a Venetian gondola to a romantic location. But did you ever notice how this is like a space gondola? Like it has the same yellow and silver design elements that the Naboo fighters have? Like everything else has this old world charm to it, but the gondola. I mean, can you squeeze any more romantic cliches into this movie? Oh wait, you can. They could have stuck in the Naboo Tower in the background and had them served wine by a waiter in a beret. Oui, Padme, can I take you out to the and give you a and and by the way, what in the hell is she wearing? I mean, really? She's kind of just asking for this guy to use the Force, isn't she? I mean, she might as well just show him where the pinball machine is. So then he stammers on, trying to make some kind of analogy about sand.
It's coarse, and rough, and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Which could be the dumbest line ever in movie history. And then she kisses him. And it's like...
No.
Now go back to looking at my extremely revealing and sexy outfit, you dumb idiot. So their next date is at the waterfall. Anakin tries to discuss politics and admits he supports a fascist dictatorship. Then he rides on a giant pig, and then they roll around. The ladies like it when you roll around with them in the grass, but only if they're awake and not drugged. Later that night, in a romantic fireside setting, Padme is changed into a sexy S&M outfit and teases this guy even more. Then he starts crying.
The closer I get to you, the worse it gets.
Then he starts begging for sex.
I will do anything that you ask.
But she still tells him no because she's a senator?
I'm a senator.
Let the guy get his rocks off! Next, Anakin murders women and children, brings a corpse home, and goes on a psychotic megalomaniacal rant.
I killed them. I killed them all.
Hi, excuse me.
They're dead.
I'd like to discuss some minor inconsistencies with some of the equipment in this room, and how it's a little different from Episode 4, A New Hope.
Be quiet. This isn't the time.
What?
I hate them.
What's not the right time? What?
This is an emotional moment. Anakin just killed some sand people.
You mean Arabs?
No. No, you racist. No.
Oh. Oh, geez, sorry. I wanted to talk about the control panels.
Why'd she have to die? I will be the most powerful Jedi ever. I will even learn to stop people from dying. He's jealous. I killed them. They're dead. And the children, too. And I slaughtered them like animals.
To be angry is to be human.
And then, even though Anakin's strikes far outweigh his successes, she still marries the guy after knowing him for only like 3 days. You know what? I take it all back. I take back every piece of criticism I ever said about the guy. George Lucas, I present you with the Totally and Completely Understands Women trophy. You've earned it, my friend. You've earned it.
I don't like sand. It's coarse, rough, and irritating, and it gets everywhere. Not like here. Here everything is soft and smooth.
This is awful. Just awful.
But I need to share my pain. I need to make others understand.
Pain? It's just a movie, mister.
No, it's not. It's more than that. It's the most disappointing thing in cinematic history. I have a duty to the human race to explain why in detail.
Wow, you really are crazy, mister. Oh my god, is this a fake movie or something? Doesn't look anything like the films I saw when I was a kid. I mean, remember Jabba the Hutt? It was like all gross and grimy and dripping. This is nothing like it. It's too clean. Everything looks too pretty. What the fuck is that?
Very
Who
impressive.
the fuck are these people?
Why is Samuel L. Jackson in Star Wars movies? When I first heard that he was gonna be in Star Wars, I was like, huh? What? After a while, it made sense to me, though. There is a reason why he's in there, and it has nothing to do with him being the absolute best person to portray the oh-so-memorable character of Mace Windu.
People getting jacked in this movie.
Let's flash back to 1997. Titanic is breaking the box office records all around the world, and at the same time, Lucas is shooting Episode 1. While he's waiting around for others to do the work that he'll eventually take credit for, he complains about Titanic.
You know, we're never going to beat Titanic. Nobody can.
You could see how annoyed he is that another director is making more money than him and stealing the spotlight. Now, it'd be really naive to assume that George Lucas returned to filmmaking just because he wanted to tell the origin story of Star Wars. He's a businessman first, and a filmmaker second. But he's a good businessman, I'll agree with that.
Where is the money? Come on, my honey. Let's spend it, right.
But the Star Wars prequels are nothing more than carefully crafted products to appeal to as many moviegoers as possible. He had milked the original trilogy as much as he could by '97, so it was time to move on. Now, with all that said, we can discuss Samuel Jackson. Now, a lot of you might be thinking that he's in Star Wars movies because they wanted to have, a black guy on the Jedi Council. It's kinda true, but there's more to it than that, because the diversity quota had already been filled. When the first Star Wars movie came out, people said, "Where's all the black people?" But then in Empire, black people started appearing everywhere. Return of the Jedi was even more diverse. We saw our first black X-Wing pilot who died. There was an Asian pilot who also died. And Lando even had a Hispanic co-pilot. In Jedi, we also got to see the first Jew in Star Wars. The Phantom Menace was also a plethora of diversity. We had Asian guys running the Trade Federation.
I was not aware of such failure.
There was a Middle Eastern junk dealer.
It takes some long time to fix it.
And we broke new ground by having the first homosexual in Star Wars. So by the time Episode 2 was released, diversity wasn't an issue. But what was an issue was demographics. Truth is, and I'm just gonna say it, black people don't really like Star Wars all that much. Sure, some do, I guess. But it's a really small number. Now, Hollywood and advertisers have a term they use to avoid being called racists. The term they use is the urban market. Now, the urban market once stole my TV, so I know they like movies. But usually it's things like Barbershop, Merida Goes to Jail, Soul Food, Set It Off, Waiting to Exhale, Friday, Three Men and a Little Lady, New Jack City. Now again, I must stress, this doesn't mean that all black people like the same kind of movies. But if I had to pick one demographic that would be least likely to watch a movie with scenes like this, it'd be black people. Oh, come on, you know I'm right. George Lucas does attempt to correct this missing demographic problem by casting two of the coolest black dudes ever in Star Wars. Now, while Burley got to play a role that was like a real cool dude,
hello, what have we here?
Samuel Jackson is horribly miscast as the most boringest character ever. You see, Jackson's strength as an actor is not playing someone that's reserved and wise. It's playing bad motherfuckers.
It's the one that says bad motherfucker.
Characters that have a certain intensity to them.
You wanna shut that mouthy bitch of yours up? Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell. Yes, goddammit! Waste the motherfuckers!
He can give a really powerful performance if put in the right role. The wrong role will suck.
The oppression of the Sith will never return.
Most times he'll be wearing a black leather jacket and he'll probably be like a cop or a special agent. You know, a role that allows him to beat people and scream at them.
What's my name? Say it! Don't die!
Jackson's really best when he's screaming.
I have had it with these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane! Don't fuck with me or I'll shove a lightning bolt up your ass! Well, believe it now, motherfucker. We gotta get this car off the road. Waste the motherfuckers! English, motherfucker! Do you speak it?
Now, if you wanted to cast an older, wiser African-American Jedi, you got so many other better choices, like Morgan Freeman, Forrest Whitaker, Sidney Poitier, and so on. Problem is that these guys, and while they're all excellent actors and could pull off the whole wise Jedi thing really well, they aren't the biggest box office draws. And they certainly aren't really that hip to young movie-going audiences. The allure that Samuel L. Jackson was going to be some kind of awesome ass-kicking Jedi in Star Wars? That was nothing more than a dirty, sleazy marketing gimmick. He didn't do anything. And his delivery of the clunky dialogue was just fucking awful.
Remember, Obi-Wan, if the prophecy is true, your apprentice is the only one who can...
Well, hey, you know, it's a Star Wars movie.
He did awkwardly swing a sword around and then decapitated a poor guy who was just trying to make his way in the galaxy. But by no means was Jackson a badass in this movie. He was just yet another creepy, boring asshole. Could have done him in the CGI and not made a bit of difference. So in short, Jackson was cast not because he was good for the part, but because his name would bring in extra dollars and an audience that might not have come otherwise. Much like how Jar Jar was there to appeal to the really little kids, Anakin was there to appeal to younger, toy-playing, aged boys. The Jedi action stuff was to appeal to the teenage to middle-aged fanboys. And lastly, why do you think Amidala changed her outfit so many times and wore such elaborate costumes? Well, that was an attempt to give little girls and women something of interest to look at. The main point I'm trying to make is you can make a film that appeals to all audiences, but you gotta keep all the elements pretty subdued in order to make it work. When you include the extreme ends of the spectrum that movies could go to in order to sell your movie to everyone possible, from like baby stuff to extreme hardcore violence, it becomes a big fucking disaster. Kinda like what Abe Lincoln once said. You can fool all of the people some of the time, and you can fool some... fuck it. Am I making any sense? Sometimes I ramble after I had a few vodka gimlets. Number 9. George Lucas ruins the lightsaber and the Force all in one scene. Now all you geeks love the lightsaber, but the question is why? Well, a lightsaber is an otherworldly device. It's pure fictional awesomeness. It can cut through anything. Even my ex-wife. Lightsabers also transform the Jedi into a kind of superhero. It's just a neat weapon. I mean, everyone wants one, and everyone wants to film themselves with one. So much it's gotten kind of annoying. However, like anything that's cool, if it's used too much, it becomes boring, except for cocaine. Luke used his lightsaber pretty sparingly, but when he took it out, you knew he meant business. That was probably because they didn't feel like doing the special effect for it so much. So again, the limitations made it cooler. But now in the prequels, things got out of hand. Maybe George didn't really know how to create and develop engaging sequences without having someone flash out the lightsaber. It's the very first thing that happens in episode 1. We can't go 5 minutes without them taking out the lightsaber. They do it when they hear a noise, for Christ's sake. Could have just been some kind of industrial accident that happened in the cargo bay. Don't you guys feel like fools now? Almost every scene requires the use of a lightsaber. Now, I know they're Jedi and all, but I just kind of equate this to dangling a shiny object in front of a cat. You gotta try to keep the audience interested in the scene if it's not working, or if you don't know how to make it work. I actually like the scene the best where they all try not to get eaten by the monsters in the arena, because we see them doing things without the fucking lightsaber. It adds some tension, but then we can't go, oh, no, don't give it, oh... Now they got him again. What, they bring extra ones? Then them kids got him. This guy, robot guy's got him. You can't go too long without seeing a lightsaber. Lightsabers, lightsabers. Everyone's got a lightsaber. What's a lightsaber? Lightsaber, lightsaber.
Oh, it's you.
But then my annoyance with the lightsaber goes even further than its overuse. It eventually becomes impractical in its own universe. Now you gotta really stop and think about this for a few minutes. Now the only reason why they had lightsabers from the beginning was because knights of the olden days had swords. It was kind of in the same way Star Wars was basically just like World War II in space. So Jedi Knights were like space knights. It's just a gimmick. The problem is that a sword is made for a 6-foot tall humanoid. But when you establish a multiracial Jedi Order that all use the same universal weapon, it becomes impractical. Each Jedi should really have their own unique weapons suited for them personally. For example, that one guy that looks like a squid, you know, with all them tentacles swinging about. A lightsaber could really pose serious injury to his head. Be careful. Or that guy in the background with the really tall, thin neck. I know what I'd swing at if I were fighting him. Or what about this clumsy fat asshole? What if he just happened to be a Jedi? His big fat hands and his slow lumbering ass would fucking get killed by Darth Maul. Then you got that guy with no legs. How's he gonna get in a laser sword fight? And then of course Yoda. He shouldn't have had any lightsaber at all. But, despite all his wisdom and knowledge, Yoda eventually has to take out a tiny baby-sized lightsaber and fight a guy 3 times as tall as he is who has a much bigger lightsaber. My problem with this is that Yoda has a handicap based on his physical limitations, when his character should be above that sort of thing. Yes, I know they both tried to do more advanced things first, like throw rocks at each other, but even in other instances, Yoda has to make up for his size when using a lightsaber. One time he throws a lightsaber at a dude because he can't reach him. He's got to jump all the time. It must be tiring.
Size matters not.
Oh, I'm sorry, Yoda. It does. It does if you use a lightsaber. All your wise sayings have been ruined in the prequels. I'm so sorry. So in this scene, he flips around the cave and bounces off the walls because he's so small that he can't reach Dooku. My question is, if Yoda can do this, and they're basically pretty well matched as far as their use of the Force goes, then why wasn't Dooku also flipping off the ceiling too? Or what if Dooku just happened to be a 19-foot tall Gorgon with the 12-foot long lightsaber? Yoda would get squished like a bug. My point is, if you can match your opponent's skills with the Force, you'd then better also be physically strong too. And this goes against everything that the Force is about. You see, Yoda was so magical and interesting because you didn't expect this little tiny creature to be a Jedi Master.
Jedi Master?
We all had a preconception that a great warrior would be someone physically strong and intimidating.
I'm looking for a great warrior.
By making Yoda a little guy, they were illustrating that the Force is something beyond the physical. But by showing Yoda fight with the lightsaber, it ruins all that because it takes that concept and those rules and throws it in the dumpster. Right next to Bambi. You see, I'm not even sure if Lucas actually understands Star Wars, or anything that happened in The Empire Strikes Back.
We've seen him, but we've never actually seen him fight. This will be the first time you actually see him pull out that little laser sword of his and go to town.
Yeah.
So that's something that everybody's waiting for.
He just kind of seems like a retard that wants to see neat things happen with his computer. I don't know if he understood what made Yoda magical, and how making Yoda fight contradicts the entire mythology of the movie. More dumb kids. One of the greatest things about the original trilogy was that we never saw any children. I think one might have ran by the camera in Empire, but really no kids were involved at all. No irritating child actors, no cringe-inducing line delivery by kids that are obviously the children of the producers. None of that crap. But now we gotta see more kids. It's almost like Lucas thought he needed to have kids in the movie for kids to want to buy things from the movie. Like they would all want to be little Jedis themselves, just like in this scene. Imaginations work differently than that. Kids would want to play as Han Solo or Luke Skywalker, or want to be Lando blowing up the Death Star. No one ever wanted to be Gorban Zuma.
Because someone erased it from the archive memory.
Or that twerp. But we're forced to sit through another shitty scene that makes no sense. This one's bad enough because it's got 30 kids in it, but it's always bothered me for a lot of other reasons. Okay, so the scene is Obi-Wan seeks Yoda's help in finding Kamino. 'cause it ain't in the records. He interrupts Yoda teaching a class or something. Right off the bat, this scene ruins the uniqueness of being trained by Yoda.
Was I any different when you taught me?
Now it's like a crowded public school or something. Then all the kids are wearing these stupid helmets and deflecting lasers shot at them by a floating ball that Luke used in the original Star Wars. Now call me crazy, but I always just assumed that Han Solo had a helmet there just lying around. You know, 'cause he was a pilot. One with a blast shield down to protect your face from, like, space radiation or whatever. And since they were all playing games in the game room, I just kind of assumed that that ball was like a game or some kind of target practice thing. Kind of like Obi-Wan devised some kind of makeshift training exercise while they were killing time. But I guess it's an official training device for young Jedis. Are we supposed to believe that he had one of those training balls in his chest all those years and brought it with him? Why would he have that? I mean, is that really all they could think of to have the young Jedis do in that scene? Is something borrowed from the original movie? I mean, do we have to rely on the original trilogy so much for nostalgia imagery that we have to take this too? Can't you come up with anything new that's memorable? Boy, oh boy, is it hard to articulate in words how stupid this scene is. I mean, everybody's standing so close to each other, and they're barely moving their swords. But, like, they could easily cut one another, right? I mean, why aren't you doing this in a really large gym where everyone can spread out? And aren't they a little young to be handling lightsabers? I mean, look how clumsy the kids are holding them when Yoda's standing like 2 feet away. I don't know. This doesn't make sense to me. Also, I was always under the impression that the Jedi constructed their own lightsaber as a kind of rite of passage. Are these like training lightsabers? Maybe they get to use the ones from the adults who died before they can make their own. That was listed in the brochure that the parents read called, "So You Want Your Child to Become a Jedi." Also, the point of this scene is that a child was supposed to propose the idea that someone deleted the planet from the archives.
Because someone erased it from the archive memory.
Wait, that was the best take you got from him? This was an idea that Obi-Wan hadn't considered, and it came from a fertile young mind. So basic movie-making logic suggests that you construct this scene where a handful of perhaps slightly older students are being taught meditation techniques to sharpen their thought process. That's when one comes up with the new, simple approach. That would at least have something to do with the Force. But instead, it's just another excuse to have a scene with lightsabers. Enough with the f***ing lightsabers. But we gotta stick with the logic that these movies are supposedly made for kids. And some kind of thoughtful meditation scene would be too boring. If we got a scene where all these children hold lightsabers, the kids will love it. After all, these are just simple movies made for kids and not adults at all. Which is why they have assassination attempts, sexual innuendo, decapitations, kidnap, torture, and suggested rape, hookers, boring political dialogue, forced amputations, drug dealing, mass murder.
Don't try to escape like the other one! Time to go in the refrigerator!
Number 10. The dissolution of tension. Bigger is not always betterer. Star Wars Episode 2 proves that George Lucas is truly the master of the art of ruining things. People can't seem to get too involved in these movies, and they're probably not sure exactly why.
We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
They call them big video games, and they say they're too reliant on special effects.
It doesn't mean that technology is going to make the film any better. That has nothing to do with art.
Or it's because anytime there's a scene that could possibly have some tension and excitement in it, it's dissolved away by its own internal contradictions. Let's take the speeder chase, for example. The movie creates a dazzling environment of dangerous heights, nauseating speeds, and millions of things you can crash into. Then it totally ruins all of this by turning the rules of reality into a cartoony farce, thus dissolving all the tension away. Obi-Wan and Anakin are falling thousands of stories and jumping out of the speeder like it's nothing at all. The implausibility of things that happen in the scene are so astounding that it makes me laugh out loud. It becomes like a Warner Brothers cartoon. All these crazy visuals and effects, and it's no more exciting than if they just chased her on foot.
It's so dense, every single image has so many things going on.
Shut up! There's only one thing that's dense here, and it ain't the frame. Now this also includes the completely pointless and stupid robot assembly line sequence. I can guarantee you that if you threw a real person onto that assembly line, they'd get fucking killed in like 2 seconds. Next, Obi-Wan is flying his little ship around, and Boba Fett is firing at him with some kind of super rapid-fire laser. He's got targeting sensors and scanners, and he can fire like 30 shots every second, and he seems to be right on the mark, but he can't hit him. Why can't he hit Obi-Wan's ship? He hits every single molecule around his ship but his ship. Instantly, all the tension evaporates. Then you watch him shoot even more. Flying and shooting and dodging rocks and flying in and out of rocks and things all over the place and shooting and more shooting and constant explosions and rocks, and so much happens so fast that you can't even process it with your brain.
It's so dense, every single image has so many things going on.
You see, you just can't start throwing tons of things on the screen because you can, and then make it go real fast and expect your audience to feel tension. Too much, too fast will disconnect the audience from reality and cancel out the excitement, because they gotta project themselves into the scene. We all understand the rules of physics in real life, and if you bend it too far, you sever the connection of the audience. It's why a sequence like this is nowhere near as exciting as this. Number 11. Big Dumb Ending. At last, we get to the big dumb ending, where we see the excitement and the passion that thousands of computer animators have for getting paychecks. So the big battle begins and the Jedi fight the robots. Mace and Obi-Wan meet up on the battlefield, and Mace asks Obi-Wan how the investigation into Padme's assassin is going. So Yoda shows up and starts an intergalactic war in order to rescue friends. First they need rescuing, then they need rescuing, then he starts dumping millions of clones to fight millions of robots, and somehow laments the whole war thing.
Begun. The Clone War.
Hey, you started it, idiot. So now we gotta sit through this seizure-inducing battle between two forces we don't care at all about. Robots and clones. At least in the last movie, we might have sorta cared about the Gungans a little. Oh, Christ, I'm referencing the Phantom Menace as a positive example? Okay, then Dooku leaves for some reason. Now, Dooku spent all his time on Geonosis hanging out in the Bug's fortress, right? But when he goes to leave, he gets on a flying motorcycle and flies away to a different hangar bay that's like 75 miles away. Then the Jedi chase after him, and I guess Padme falls out of the ship. Now, they didn't really know where Dooku was going. They might have suspected it was a hangar bay, but it could have just been a ship somewhere. Maybe he wasn't going anywhere. Maybe he was leading them into a trap where there's a whole second front of battle droids waiting for him. Point is, when Padme lands on the sand, she says,
"We've got to get to that hangar."
How did you know they were going to a hangar bay? Did you read the script too? What's that in the sand over there? Is that the script? So Anakin and Obi-Wan find Dooku. And then Obi-Wan says,
We'll take them together. You're going slowly on the left.
"Going slowly on the left? What the fuck does that mean? You're not chiseling a marble statue here. Don't you know how fast these fights can go? Plus, Dooku can hear what you're saying." So then lightsaber fight 873A begins, difficulty level 8. Anakin and Obi-Wan are both low in force power and energy levels from fighting in the arena and the battle. However, Dooku's power levels are at 100% because he hasn't had to exert himself yet. He starts off with the Force Bolt, directed at Anakin, causing him to lose a great deal of his force power. Obi-Wan then deflects his Force Bolt with a move called Force Block, using his lightsaber. Obi-Wan is tired. His stamina and force power is rapidly diminishing. This allows Dooku to get the best of him. Anakin's had a moment to rest, and he's recharged his force power enough to use Force Jump and deflect Dooku's attack. Obi-Wan tosses Anakin his lightsaber, and Anakin goes into Twin Saber Assault mode. Dooku knows he doesn't have time to mess around, and he needs to get off Geonosis quickly. He has a good amount of force power left, so he uses some of it with something called Sith Block, a power where the dark side causes momentary confusion. Dooku cuts Anakin's arm off and then force pushes him again. And Yoda comes, some other things happen, they warn him about grave danger again, then they just do nothing. Guess the Emperor got the army, and Anakin marries whatever.
Welcome back, Lord Tyrannus. Thank you, my master. But what happened back there, well, I'm really not sure. What do you mean you're not sure? Well, Yoda showed up with the clones, and they fought the robots. And I'm not sure who won. Excellent. I must now change my pantaloons. It appears I have shat myself.
Why don't they just tell the Galactic Senate that Obi-Wan Kenobi found a clone army on Kamino? I mean, especially after they're about to vote for a clone army, right?
I know, none of it makes sense.
All those years ago.
I never knew how bad this movie was. I mean, I heard, but I didn't think it would be this bad.
And now that I'm with you again, I'm in agony.
Thank you for sharing this with me.
The closer I get to you,
Sure.
the worse it is.
Let's go back to the movie. This is
The thought
a romantic
of not
scene
being
here.
with you.
Were you ever married? Did you have a wife?
I had 3 of them, actually. They all died in unrelated accidents, though.
Oh, that must have been awful. And all 3 of them died tragically.
Number 12. Oh, George. The original Star Wars movies borrowed from earlier iconic imagery in order to create the look of the movie. With clones, it's just whatever they could shove in there from varying unrelated sources, even taking things from the previous films. You see, in May of 2000, Lucas must have seen Gladiator and decided that he also wanted an arena in his movie. But his was gonna be bigger and betterer. Then I guess there was an attempt to outdo Ridley Scott even more by making a futuristic city that was much bigger and betterer than the one in Blade Runner. My computers are better than yours. The line between paying homage and ripping off starts to blur at this point. But the worst is yet to come when clones begin stealing things from Empire. At some point, someone told George Lucas that the second act in a 3-act dramatic structure is when all the characters are at their lowest point. I think he learned this after the people who knew what they were doing made Empire Strikes Back, because he seems to attempt to copy a lot of that movie in Episode 2. Unsuccessfully, I might add. Now, what do I mean by lowest point? Well, typically a story is divided into 3 acts. The first act sets everything up. The second act puts the characters through some challenges, i.e. the drama. And the third act, they begin to work against the problem and ultimately overcome it. If you look at each trilogy as its own contained story, then the second film should be the darkest one. Empire pulled this off perfectly, of course. Because I love Empire so much I f*** it. In Episode 2, nothing like that really happens. Nothing much happens at all, except for you could say they get the clones, I guess. It's a colorful mishmash of stuff that happens that bridges the gap between Episode 1 and Episode 3. However, Lucas lifts a lot of the iconic elements and imagery from Empire and shoves it into this film wherever he can. This is just to form some kind of connection with the franchise's best film, and to make it seem like this is the darkest chapter of the new trilogy. First off, it's love. Empire had the subtext of romance in the darkest of times. Clones attempts to recreate that but fails in every way possible. Then, while having a much different story, Attack of the Clones borrows so many visuals from the Empire it's comical. Some so subtle you might not have even noticed, but your brain did. Leia and Padme are both dressed in white, a sequence in an asteroid belt. Things that look like Bespin ships, the fast-paced, low, cavernous reveal shot. Boba Fett appears in both films, sticking your ship onto something else to avoid detection by scanners. A city above the clouds. A city above the water. Space junk floats out the back of a ship. Slave 1 tracks a ship, and a ship tracks Slave 1. C-3PO gets taken apart in an industrial conveyor belt type place, and R2-D2 drags him around. A plastic tube gets cut in half by a lightsaber, and there's an attempt to recreate the smoky, dim conditions of the Empire duel. Anakin loses his arm, Luke loses his hand. Falling. And that ends pretty much on the same shot. C-3PO and R2-D2 were both there, and there's the reveal of the robot hand.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme...
Thank you. I got it.
Every stanza
got it.
kind of rhymes with the last one.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Hopefully
Stop.
it'll work.
Stop. Having a creepy Skeletor hand. Oh wait, we're done with that part, right? Then there was one last thing I wanted to mention. After finally working up the courage to tell Han that she loves him, and exposing her true feelings, Leia fears that she might have lost him forever. There's a last-ditch effort to save him, but they're too late. She watches the ship fly off. This could be the last she ever sees of Han Solo, the man she loves. It's pretty heartbreaking and filled with a lot of heavy emotions. In Clones, a similar type of thing happens. Padme fires at a fleeing ship on a landing platform. Someone named Count Dooku is on it, who's going to do something. Certainly not getting misty-eyed over this. If you compare Empire with Clones in this way, you can see a vast difference from the realism of actual locations and sets to the phony, plastic, cartoony, unrealistic environments. From a real Yoda who was there to teach us things about the Force, to a fake-looking computer Yoda who was there to do video game shit. And most importantly, a love story that felt like real people that we grew to care about, struggling in a tough situation. But rather characters we are told we should like, with no more depth than a cardboard cutout projected against a fake background.
For my ally is the Force. And a powerful ally it is. Life creates it.
I need a midichlorian count.
Makes it grow.
The reading is off the chart.
Its energy surrounds us.
Over 20,000.
And binds us.
Even Master Yoda doesn't have a midichlorian count that high.
Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
This weapon is your life.
You must feel the Force around you. Yes.
With the new digital technology and everything, I'm pretty much, whatever I can imagine, I can do. We have clones and droids and flying termites and rockets taking off, flying gunships, ground troops, 200 Jedi.
There's some really good action in this movie. People getting wiped out, man. There's some wipeouts in this movie.
And then they get trapped into this droid factory. We see Jedi in large battle scenes, battling as a large group. And before, we've never seen that before. There's always been a couple of Jedi fighting each other.
These are the real flaws of the prequels, not the tiny nitpicking about things, but the major problems.
Every single frame, every single shot in the movie has a digital effect.
Pretty much every set has blue screen, even if it's just out a window or something.
It's everywhere. I think I've been on one set where there hasn't been any blue screen.
The guy who's creating that character will create their responses off how you respond to their responses that aren't there. It's a nightmare.
When you suck out the humanity from the films and replace it with the ease of digital filmmaking, well, it just sucks. Email me if you want a pizza roll. Post a comment on this web zone and I will email you a pizza roll. Please visit my web zone. Stop by and say hello. Talk about this review and other things on the fan zone. If you stop by, there's a bucket of pizza rolls in the corner of the room next to the mop. My cat ain't gonna milk itself. So, what'd you think?
It was just awful. Harry.
Yeah.
I have an idea.
What's that?
Let's watch episode 3. I want to see how this fucking schlock ends.
Oh, baby, I haven't even started my review of episode 2. I was planning on doing that after I dump your body.
Oh, please, Harry, we can watch it together. We can find all the pointless inconsistencies, nitpick it apart like huge nerds, and expose George Lucas for the hack that he really is.
Oh, honey pie, You're saying all the right things to me right now. You know that.
Oh, this is all just so fascinating. Just to think, all these years, I could have been making reviews on YouTube instead of shooting up and turning tricks.
Well, what are you waiting for, baby pie? Stick it in. Stick it in. You know where it goes, don't you? I bet you do. Yeah. That's right, sweetie pie. You know how to do that. Right. Oh, yeah. And Star Wars movies. There we go. Yeah. Play that disc, baby. Oh, you're not going to be able to unbelieve it. I can't wait to watch this. Who is FBI? And what is he always warning me about? Yeah! Alright, we're gonna watch episode 3. It's gonna be amazing. I'll find all the flaws and details. It's gonna be great. Well, not the movie, but finding all the flaws and details of the movie. Alright. What's this? Is this the Jedi Library? I don't remember this scene. What's going on? What? Baby, stay out! Hey!
What in the fuck? You lied to me! You tricked me! She lied to me. She lied to me.